Aw yeah, it's time for another Android mini PC review. This is the latest Android media player from Transmart. It's got a lot of awesome new features like a great new processor and GPU, all new UI on top of Android KitKat, and 4K video support. I'm Rivers from Some Cool Tech, and this is my review of the Transmart Vega S89 Elite. Let's start by taking a look at what comes inside of the box. The Vega itself is a round disc-shaped player about 5 inches across. It's got a nice selection of ports on the back and an LED indicator and IR sensor on the front. We'll go into more details on the ports soon. Also included is an infrared remote control. It takes regular AAA batteries, and I think this is a nice value-added item. Also included are a regular HDMI cable and your power adapter cable, and I think this is a pretty good one because the Vega can actually power an external USB hard drive straight to the ports. It also includes an analog audio and video output cable, your USB to OTG cable for upgrading, and finally a fairly helpful user manual. So that's everything that comes in the box with the Vega. Now let's take a look at the hardware itself. First, it uses the latest processor from Amlogic, the S802. This is a quad-core A9 CPU, but it's also got a Mali 450 GPU, which is much more powerful than the Mali 400. This Amlogic CPU works much better at processing high-definition video. It even has several 4K output settings for 4K capable TVs and can play back 4K or UHD video with no problem. Basically, this thing plays video very well. Probably the best Android mini PC video playback I've seen so far. The video is liquid smooth and it could handle just about everything I threw at it. It could even play 4K video in MX Player and raw Blu-ray footage in XBMC from a USB hard drive, although the audio was a little out of sync. Okay, let's get back to the hardware. Now in the back you've got your power button, 2 full-size USB ports, your analog video and audio out, your power in, your Ethernet, HDMI, optical audio out, your SD card slot, and an OTG port for upgrading. Here's a cool feature. The SD card actually faces up on the Vega. And an even cooler feature is that the Vega even supports cards up to 64 gigabytes. I'm using the SanDisk Ultra because it works nice and fast for video playback. I've tried quite a few different cards in these Android mini PCs, and these SanDisks seem to work the best. I'll put a link to it in the description down below. Now let's take a quick look at the included IR remote control. So on here you've got a power button, mute button, your video player button, your music player button, web browser button, and your app drawer button. Then you've got volume down, volume up, fast forward, rewind. You've got a home button, back, multi-directional pad with select in the middle. You've got your menu button and a mouse button, which I'll show you in a minute. And then you've got your number pad and backspace key. So the basic idea behind the mouse button is you turn it on and then you hold the direction you want to go and the mouse slowly goes over there. So if you get stuck in some app, you can use the mouse to get where you want to go. But what works a lot better is just using the toggle buttons where you want to go. So you can see it gets you where you want to go really quick in this launcher and it works really good. But the mouse is made so when you get into an app that's not made for a toggle remote, you can kind of get where you need to go in there, but it's going to be slow going if you do that. So if you have apps where you have a lot of mousing, I definitely recommend getting a wireless mouse or an Air mouse remote control for those apps. But if you just want media player, this remote should work pretty good for you. Okay, now let's take a look at the software with the new UI and all the different settings. So this guy's running on Android KitKat 4.2.2, and it's got this new custom launcher. It's kind of made for being able to use a remote to toggle around, but you can still install apps, you can still install other launchers, but there's no taskbar now. So if you go into one of these categories that they have here, you can see that the apps that they already had installed in here, and then you can also add more apps if you want to. So under My Apps, that's like your app drawer, so all the apps you have installed on the Android mini PC will show up in here. Now let's take a look over in settings. So the first thing you'll see is your network, and you can choose Wi-Fi or Ethernet if you have your Ethernet cable connected. Next up we have display, and this is where the Vega really shines. So you can see I've got it going at 1080p 60 frames a second because that's what my TV does, but it also goes up to 4K at some different refresh rates here. And I'll be able to test this a little further next week. I'm getting a 4K TV, so I'll try to put a quick video up then. But having all that horsepower to run 4K video actually makes your regular 1080p video look really good on here. It's just nice and fluid, no cutting out, no artifacts. Okay, here on the Advanced tab, you can get a remote app for your phone called Remote IME, and it really sucks, but if you just have to have a wireless mouse, that it kind of works for that. And down here at the bottom is where you can adjust your audio settings. So if you want to have it come out of your optical audio out or go through your HDMI cable, choose one of those in there. Here you can see some of your information about Android. So it's running 4.4.2 KitKat. And there's also a system update option, so you should be able to update with over-the-air updates when they become available for this device. So that's nice to see. And then if you go back and hit more settings, that'll take you to your traditional Android settings here. So you can see it's got Wi-Fi. Bluetooth is working well on here. Have had no problems at all with that. Now here under storage is something that's really interesting. You can see you've got 8 gigs of app space, and it's all right there in one partition. So you don't have to have multiple partitions with different app storage. It's just all on one. So I think that's really the way to go, and hopefully they can do this from now on in the future on all Android mini PCs if possible. Okay, and here if you have an Air Mouse remote control and it's too slow or too fast, you can go to this pointer speed and adjust it up or down. This is kind of nice to adjust sometimes. See there, it's really fast. There, it's super slow. And right there is just about right on this one. And here's your kernel version and Android version over here. Just a little few more settings to take a look at. All right, let's run a couple benchmarks. So here's LinPack. I always do a quick CPU benchmark on there, and it's getting probably between about 200 and 286 on here. So that was a top score. But anyway, some of the best scores I've seen on an Android mini PC so far. Okay, now we'll shoot over to the webcam real quick, and it does support my Logitech C525 webcam. And it's actually recording awesome at 720p at 30 frames a second. So you can see it's nice and fast, no tracers, no jerkiness. Okay, now let's jump over to Antutu for the total system benchmark here. And it got a really good score, 25,389. So pretty good. Not as good as what I've seen on some websites, but maybe it's because I installed a whole bunch of different apps and something's slowing it down a bit. I don't know. Here you can see the last part of the Antutu benchmark compared to my Note 3, and they're getting similar frame rates, although I think the Note 3 is going a little bit faster, but the end result, the Note 3 just totally smoked this at 36,000. Okay, next up is Miracast. Is working really well on the Vega. I'm using my LG G-Pad 8.3 right here, and it's mirroring really well. Actually, I love LG stuff because it Miracasts really good all the time. My Samsung wouldn't even work. I got this error right here. I actually get this error a lot trying to mirror my Note 3 to a lot of different Android mini PCs, so I'll probably get an LG next time, probably the G3. Okay, now let's take a look at video playback on the Vega. So video playback works really well. XBMC works really well on here. You don't need a special version to run it, and I think it runs a lot better because this processor, all the files for it are open source, whereas Rockchip, the processor, it's all not open source, so people can't modify how it plays back video. So it just works great on here. And here you can see some different home footage I have. And usually home footage is really hard to play on these. It slows it down, it gets jerky, but just totally liquid smooth on here all the way around. In fact, I even tested some raw Blu-ray footage that I put onto my USB hard drive, and it played back no problem, except for that the audio is out of sync. But you can kind of tweak that in XBMC to get it to where you want it. So the video playback is very good on here. Here's another piece of footage I run on a lot of Android mini PCs, and this is actually shot in 60 frames per second, 1080p, and a lot of players will play it, but they'll slow down when they play it. In fact, this is the only one I've actually used that doesn't slow down when it plays it, so that's a nice feature right there. Now, XBMC wouldn't play my 4K footage, but the built-in 4K player and MX player both could play it, so this is running at a 1080p out because I don't have a 4K TV right at the moment, but it does play it, and it looks really nice on there too. So let's go ahead and take a look. So you can see it actually has nice smooth playback. The shakiness is actually from my camera work and not from the video playback. But I just wanted to show you a couple pan shots so you can see it's not jerking or skipping when it's playing back. So I've got a 4K TV on the way, so when it comes I'll test it on the Vega and I'll put the results in the video description down below. Okay, and last but not least, I wanted to do a little gaming on the Vega, so I hooked up my G910 with Bluetooth, connected right up, and it worked like a charm, actually. So first up is Asphalt 8, one of my favorite Android games of all time, and as soon as I started it up, it recognized the controller, and I was ready to play in about 10 seconds, so piece of cake there. In fact, all 3 games that I played on here, immediately recognized the controller, and I was ready to play within 30 seconds. Next up came Riptide 2, and it connected right up, and I think all these games actually look really good with a 1080p kernel on this, probably better than most Android mini PCs I've played on before, so just the video quality was just awesome on here. And finally, Dead Trigger worked great too. I just had to tell it had a controller, and then I was ready to go on here as well. And the video quality, again, just looks awesome on this device. And finally, I had to install a custom launcher just to see if it could be done. So I put Next Launcher 3D on here, and it's working pretty good. The icons just look amazing, just so crisp and clear because of the 1080p kernel. It just looks so good. But there's no taskbar, that's the one problem. So if you need to hit the home button, you gotta be using the remote to hit that home button, or hit back till you get to where you wanna be. I wish there was an option in the settings where you could enable or disable the taskbar, then it would be perfect. Still, overall, the TronSmart Vega S89 is probably the best Android mini PC device I've used so far, especially for media playback. It's just so fast, so liquid smooth, it's just perfect for media playback. Other things like using a web browser and things that use the mouse aren't quite as good. The mouse is a tad laggy, but still very usable and definitely nice and fast. And the video quality just looks good. You never get any flicker. My video capture always works on here. The software is very stable too. Actually, I haven't had an automatic reboot yet. The only thing is there are one or two things that need to be updated, so we'll see if TronSmart keeps its software updated as well as Minix has with its excellent attention to software improvements and updates. I'll add a list of the pros and cons of the Vega in the video description down below. That way as updates come out and things improve, I can keep everything up to date. Also, for more details, check out somecooltech.com. I'll have links to the TronSmart Vega S89, S89 Elite, SanDisk Ultra SD card, and the other hardware and software in the video description down below. Thanks for watching, and as always, aloha.